Welcome, students, to 4.2 Experiments Part 2. Though there are many learning targets in this section, we're going to focus on the bottom 4, describing a completely randomized design, a placebo effect, the purpose of blinding in an experiment, the term statistically significant, and the purpose of blocking in an experiment. A completely randomized design is where each subject or experimental unit is randomly assigned to a treatment. So the most common way that this is done is each experimental unit, or subject if it's a human, is randomly assigned to a group. Then that group all receives a single treatment, and then you compare the results. Sometimes you're comparing a treatment to a control group. A control group is someone that receives no treatment, or an inactive treatment or a baseline treatment. Now, occasionally the subjects will bias the results or skew the results because they are aware of what treatment they are receiving and they have preconceived ideas about which treatment is better or what the results of that treatment should be. So a single blind experiment is where one group of subjects is given a placebo. A placebo is no treatment. It's like a control group would be given a placebo, except for the subject is unaware of whether they are getting the true treatment or the placebo. For example, the placebo could be a sugar pill instead of an actual medicinal pill. The other person that has a stake in the experiment is the researcher, so whoever is conducting this experiment. A single blind is where the subjects are unaware of what treatment they are receiving. A double blind is where the researcher also is unaware of which subject is receiving which treatment. This can eliminate bias because the researcher may have some stake in the game as to which treatment would result in bigger change. Statistically significant is the term for results that are so different it is unlikely to have happened by chance alone. When we have a statistically significant result, we can infer that the treatment really did make a difference in whatever our response variable was. If we used random assignment, we can infer causation based on the treatment that we used. Blocking is done when there's an underlying characteristic of the subjects or the experimental units that may skew the results. For example, using the example from your book, looking at people using different keyboards, a non-smartphone user would generally be worse at using a keyboard than a smartphone user because of the lack of experience. Therefore, we don't want the non-smartphone users to accidentally all end up in the same group and thus skewing the results toward keyboard A looking better or keyboard B looking better. So what we do is we separate them initially by the characteristic that we think will make a difference in the results, and then we make sure we split those groups evenly and give half of that group one treatment and half of the other group the other treatment. When we combine those results, then we know we have even distributions based on those two characteristics. Gender is another characteristic that is often separated because men and women react to things differently, and our bodies are composed differently. So a block is the group that is known to be similar in some way by some characteristics. Randomized blocks is when once you've separated into blocks, they are now assigned to the treatment separately. So as you can see in this flowchart here, blocks are similar to strata in an observational study. They're called blocks in an experiment. Matched pairs is ideal because it is pairing subjects with themselves. The least variability is to compare me to myself versus comparing me to another individual where we have some innate differences. So a matched pairs design is where a subject is compared to themselves, meaning that I would receive both treatments. Now, since the order of the treatments matters, usually that is determined randomly, which treatment I receive first. And then the other subjects in the experiment would randomly be assigned which treatment they receive first. So we've talked about what a completely randomized design is. We've talked about placebo effect and the purpose of blinding. We've also talked about randomized block design and a matched pairs design, as well as a little tidbit about the word statistically significant. Thanks so much.